Greetings, welcome to the Metal Book Tavern. I'm filming this video on March 27th, 2023. A few days ago, I was rewatching some of my old videos. They are on my Russian channel. Before it became Russian, I used to make English videos there. And the video I came across is all the unread books in my library as for March 2022. I rewatched that video and it has been a year since that video and a lot of things have changed. Some books left that list, some books were added to that list, and some books are still on that list. So I decided to record an updated video on the books I haven't read as for March 2023. I read books in both English and Russian, therefore this video is going to be in two parts. First I'm going to go through books in Russian, and then an interlude, and then books in English. The amount of books is approximately the same. The very first book is Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. I've had this book since February 2022 and I still haven't read it. I went through one page, I think, and I wasn't in the mood of reading that book. I don't know when I'm going to read this, and I really hope I read this soon because I like the annotation. And usually I read Agatha Christie quite fast. Usually it's maximum a few months since the buying and reading of an Agatha Christie book. This one, however, I've had more than a year. Next book is a philosophy book. It's Metaphysics by Aristotle. I've had this book since February 2021. I have had this on my shelves for more than 2 years. I recently was cleaning my bookshelf and I came across this book, went through a few pages, and there's a high chance I'm going to start reading this book this year. So the next book is The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub. Oh, in Russian version of this video, I forgot to mention Peter Straub. From 2017 up to 2021, I went 4 years without reading a Stephen King novel. I began reading Stephen King in 2021, read him in 2022, and in 2023 I finally realized, it occurred to me, I want more Stephen King. Yeah, sure, I read the Stephen King in last 2 years ago and 1 year ago, but it's in 2023 that I decided I want more. So I'm planning to read The Talisman quite soon. I also want to read it quite fast because I need this book for a special video in Russian, that video, but maybe I'm going to do an English version too. But I definitely plan the Russian version of the video. This plot sounds very interesting. All the parallel worlds, magic, and so on. So last year I discovered this author named Hermann Hesse. I liked his books and I own 4, and I intend to buy more of his. I already read 2 of his books and I have 2 left unread. These are Gertrude and The Last Summer of Klingzor. I bought these books in May 2022. Still haven't read them. I went through the first page of both books and I was like, nah, not today, not today. I've had the same deal with Damien. It was a good book, but Beneath the Wheel was better. Much, much better. I hope these 2 are also strong enough. So the next comes Harriet Beecher Stowe. This is Uncle Tom's Cabin. I've had this book since August 2021. I bought it in Moscow. It was the last book I bought in Moscow, and I've been planning to read this book and I still haven't read it. I read the first page and for some reason I didn't want to get into it. I will read this book eventually. So the next book is The Divine Comedy by Dante. I've had this book since December 2021. It was one of the last books that I bought that year. Unlike the previous example, I did not plan to read this book neither in 2022 or in 2023. I don't know when I'm going to read this. Right now, I am not in the mood for epic poems. I read The Faust and Paradise Lost, and I haven't read The Divine Comedy and another epic poem that's going to be in this video. That's literally the next one. Another epic poem is The Iliad by Homer. I remember I bought to this book alongside And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie in Russian back in summer 2020. It was in June or July, I don't remember when. Probably in June. And so I read And Then There Were None and I loved it. And the Iliad, I don't know when I'm going to read this because I read a few pages back in 2020 and then I was like, your time will come, not today. When I was cleaning my bookshelves, I went through a few pages and the chances of me reading this book sooner are increasing. I do really need to get through this because it's a classic and everyone knows this. And so the next book is The Tower of the Swallow by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is book 6 of the Witcher series. I have been reading The Witcher for 5 years already. Began reading in 2018. I don't know when I'm going to finish The Witcher. I still don't know the last one, The Lady of the Lake. I do want to buy that one, but then I'm like, yeah, not now. Sometime later. There are other books to buy. This is what happens when you buy book series because it's popular. Now don't get me wrong, I like The Witcher, but right now I'm not in the mood for it. I don't have a special interest. But maybe if I buy the last book, maybe I'll read this. And no, unlike The Dark Tower, The Witcher is staying because I actually like The Witcher and I have all the books in the right edition. So the next book is Atlas Shrugged Part 3, A is A by Ayn Rand. I know that in English this book, Atlas Shrugged, is one full book, but in Russian, as you can see, it's split into 3 parts. I bought Atlas Shrugged, all 3 parts, back in October 2021. I read the first one in 2021, the second one in 2022, and I guess I should read this year. You know what, when it comes to this book, Atlas Shrugged, I often like to say that you shouldn't be afraid of books you disagree with. You shouldn't be afraid of books that challenge you, and there might be some interesting thoughts even in such books. Yes, Atlas Shrugged is grey. I disagree with this book in many ways, but there are also very interesting ideas all the same. So the next book is Pan's Labyrinth by Cornelia Funke. I tried reading a Cornelia Funke book once. It was The King of Thieves back in 2006. This was before I was 12. I want to get into for Cornelia Funke, and this book, it was the book that I got. Well, this was the book available in the store by her, and one of the best things ever is that this is the novelization of one of my all-time favorite films, Pan's Labyrinth, and I'd like to see the result. And I like this edition very much. One perk of reading in both English and Russian is that I get exposed to many different great editions. Well, this is an amazing edition. We have these amazing hardcovers. Also, I have come to realization that it's better to read high fantasy in Russian rather than in English. And these words are coming from a person who loves reading in English, especially Tolkien, and supports reading in English. First of all, we have great editions. Like I said, hardcovers. They're big and beautiful. The second part is that it's easier to pronounce fantasy names in Russian. If there's a mistake while reading in Russian, you make an emphasis on the wrong... I forgot how to say it in English. Vowel, yes. If you make a mistake in Russian, it's the wrong vowel. It's the emphasis on the wrong vowel. But it's still much easier to pronounce that English. The next 2 books, the last 2 books, are the greatest example of this. So we have Dune by Frank Herbert. I have Dune in 2 volumes. This is the second volume. This one contains books 4, 5 and 6. God Emperor of Dune Heretics of Dune and Children of Dune. So Dune and the next example are both full of almost unpronounceable words. Yes, I know that English readers complain a lot about it, and this is why I feel lucky that I can read these in Russian, because it's easier to pronounce. So the gap between reading the first book and finishing the third one was very big. I began reading Dune in September or October. It was October, yes, I remembered, 2021, and I finished Children of Dune in February 2023. The gap was quite big. It was more than a year. I hope the gap between book 4 and book 6 isn't very big. This is going to be very interesting, I hope, especially since that Children of Dune ended on an interesting note. I'd like to see what happens to Paul's children. So the last book in Russian, it's Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. This is book 4 in Wheel of Time series. This is one of the books planned for this year, but here's one problem, because I want to have the next installments of the series and I only have 4. I'll have to order from Russia. I ordered this one too. The deal is it's going to take time, it's going to be expensive, but Wheel of Time is so good, it's worth it. And it's better to read in Russian due to these amazing editions and due to the fact that it's easier to understand the complex names in Russian. So there is an interlude, because I got myself a book in Georgian. This is the original language of the book, and I know that the English translation of this book exists. So this is me, Grandma, Iliko, and Ilarioni. This is how it's called in Georgian, by Georgian writer Nodar Dumbadze. I just entered a bookstore. I saw this book. It was quite cheap. I liked the edition. I remember that I tried reading this book in Georgian back in 2006. Back then my Georgian skills were much weaker than now, and I failed to read this, but now I'm ready to read this book again. I like this edition, how it opens. It's soft, it's floppy, and it opens well. And it's quite big too. Alright, part 2. Now we've come to books in English. Alright, now it's time for part 2. Books in English. The first book that I have in my hand is Fear and Trembling by Søren Kierkegaard. Oh, these Danish names are quite hard to pronounce. Well, it's easier to pronounce Hans Christian Andersen and Lars Ulrich. Easy, but Søren Kierkegaard is quite hard. So I bought this book in the fall of 2022. I think it was in October or November, I don't remember. And this is sort of a philosophical writing. This is about Abraham and Isaac. Well, the Binding of Isaac. Oh, I used to love that game. I used to play it a lot, and I remember the story, the original story the game is based on, and I got myself this. Yeah, this is the Penguin Classics edition. I actually like Penguin Classics. So this book also has this thing attached, and it has a quite a long introduction. So the book starts here. Anyway, I don't know when I'm going to read this, but I will at some point, because I like philosophy. Next book is Unfinished Tales by J.R.R. Tolkien. Unfinished Tales of Numenor and Middle-earth. I have owned this since December 2029, and I still haven't read this. Well, I did read Beren and Luthien, Children of Húrin, The Fall of Gondolin, the first 2 Lord of the Rings books, and currently reading Return of the King. I don't know when I'm going to read this. I need to read this. I don't know why I missed out on this when I read other Tolkien books. Especially I want to read this because this one has The Hunt for Gollum, and this is the basis of the fan film The Hunt for Gollum. It's on YouTube, it's 40 minutes long, and it's visually close to Peter Jackson films. I recommend that one. Next book is planned for this year, and this is A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. So technically I have already read A Game of Thrones, but that was in Russian, and now I'm going to read in English because I'm interested in knowing the original language of George R.R. Martin novels. I only have one in my hands. I don't know if I'm going to get in the rest, but I'm definitely going to read this. So the next book is The Freedom to be Free by Hannah Arendt. This is also another philosophical thing. I do have a thing for philosophy, if you have guessed already. Yeah, lots of freedom. Freedom to be free. Oh, I like this edition. This is Penguin Books Great Ideas edition because I went to shops and they had a lot of these. Great ideas. I like these editions. You can easily carry them in your pocket. I literally had these in my pocket and it's quite small. It has to be easy to read. I do want to get more of these. So the next two books are 2 volumes of Sherlock Holmes stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I've had these since December 2029. And I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I like the covers. Back in 2019 I thought I would never read this because back then reading in English was much harder than it is now, and I don't know when I'm going to read this. This is going to be unread for a long time, I guess. But eventually I'll want to read a Sherlock Holmes book and I will go through it. Or maybe I'll get myself other editions, much easier editions with a bigger font. And this is going to be part of the collection only. So the next book is The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents by Sir Terry Pratchett. Yes, I know this book says The Amazing Maurice, but its full title is The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents. I already read one page, just went through one page, and there's one line I want to read to you. The line that makes me want to read this book. Rats, they chased the dogs and beat the cats. But there was more to it than that. As The Amazing Maurice said, it was just a story about people and rats. And the difficult part of it was deciding who the people were and who were the rats. Amazing. You can feel from the first lines that the book is going to be really great. Can't wait to read this. This is one of my recent purchases. I bought it in January. So the next book is The Fall of Arthur by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is also one of my latest purchases. I bought it in late 2022 and this is sort of a poem. Yeah, no, I said I'm not in the mood for epic poems, but unlike the Iliad or the Divine Comedy, that isn't an epic poem, I mean a large one. It has poetic elements, but it also has prose as well. Probably it was a commentary. And it's quite short too. I do want to get through this. Let's see what J.R.R. Tolkien has done to the Arthurian legends. So technically I read these books in Russian, now I want to read them in English. The Harry Potter books, here's the Order of Phoenix and the Half-Blood Prince. I am currently reading The Prisoner of Azkaban and I stopped it for a while. I also need to get Goblet of Fire and Deathly Hallows in these Bloomsbury editions. And also I have to point out that when reading Harry Potter, I mostly read the first 3 books back in the day, but books 4 to 7, not that much. I do want to read these. I know for foreign English readers these books may seem big and hard, but I went through a few pages. It isn't hard to read. Harry Potter in general is easy to read in English. It isn't going to be hard. Next book is one of my recent purchases. It's The Crucible by Arthur Miller. This is my first ever Penguin Modern Classics book. So this is a play and it's only 126 pages long. This one I'm going to read in the nearby future. I'm going to read it very soon. It's very small. It's a play. This is going to be an easy read for me. And the last book is the book by Stephen King. It's 11/22/63. I had this since fall of 2022. I don't remember when I bought it. I just went to the shop. I saw this book. I saw the price. It was cheap and I was like, I need this book. I originally thought that because this book is very big it's going to be hard, but then I went through the first page and I saw that it was quite easy to read. Stephen King has a specific way of writing. It can be a little bit hard for a foreign English reader like me, but nonetheless he in general isn't a hard reader to read, so this is going to be an easy read, I guess. Even though it's quite big. Anyway, that's all. These are all the unread books in my library. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd like to point out that I also have books that I started to read or I'm in the process of reading or I have to finish, but these don't count. I only counted the books that I completely haven't read, except for probably the first page, but that doesn't count. So thanks for watching. See you next time. What the books you haven't read? Let me know down in the comments. See you next time. Goodbye.